Religious leaders should not be marginalized for meeting with political leaders, even if the political leaders are not popular within their community.
Speaking truth to power, it is the role of a religious leader to address those in power.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
Yes, thank you. And I, too, would like to welcome you here to today's edition of the American Religious Town Hall meeting. We're so very glad that you've joined us for this important discussion. Now, you've only heard from two of the panelists. We have many others, but I'd like for you to meet them all. They're going to say their name and tell us a little bit about what they do. Let's begin with the gentleman to my right.
Shalom, I'm Rabbi Phil Bentley, retired, living in Hendersonville, North Carolina.
My name is Canon John Peterson. I'm an Episcopal priest and I'm canonically resident in the Diocese of Washington.
I'm Tom Plumley. I'm a minister in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. I serve at First Christian Church in Fort Worth, Texas.
I'm Andrea Luxton. I'm president of Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan, which is affiliated with the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
My name is Othel Hawthorne Lakey, and I'm a bishop in retirement in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, and I reside in Beaufort, Georgia, just northeast of Atlanta.
Hi, I'm Tony Matthews, and I'm the senior pastor at North Garland Baptist Fellowship in Garland, Texas.
All right, thank you very much for being here today. As you've noticed, we have many panelists who've been with the program for many years, as a matter of fact. Some that went away and came back again. Bishop, glad to have you here with us again.
Yes, I just dropped by to see what you guys were doing.
Well, thank you for coming. And then we have our newest member of the panel. For the last few weeks, we've had the privilege of having Rabbi Bentley with us today. So thank you for being here. Let's get right to our subject, shall we? As Americans, we have freedoms that are treasured and precious to us. The freedom of speech is one of them, and the First Amendment protects this freedom. Additionally, in certain quarters, there is a conversation about whether or not another freedom is valued within the religious community. This freedom is referred to as the freedom to meet. The freedom to meet is characterized by one important factor, namely, a person can meet with whomever he or she desires, especially if the meeting is for discussing the improvement of that person's community. South Carolina pastor John Gray, an African American, is one pastor who has been criticized for meeting with President Donald Trump to discuss prison reform, job growth, and other issues affecting inner cities. Moreover, according to some, Pastor Gray and other leaders of the Black community have been declared guilty of giving the president nothing but a photo op. According to one news article, Gray has faced some backlash since going to the White House and has been questioned by his own congregation on the matter. Appearing on CNN Tonight with Don Lemon, Gray called on Martin Luther King Jr.'s wisdom that we cannot influence a table that we are not seated at. Lemon fired back, quote, "I'm not sure you understand what I'm saying," he said, going on to say, could you have done a conference call, or could you have been in another place besides the White House? All these African Americans sitting there, they are using you as a prop. The two continued to go back and forth on whether or not Gray did the right thing by meeting with President Trump, and whether the president had good intentions to meet with Black leaders in light of this. Today, I'd like our panelists to address these questions, and there are three of them. There may be more along the way. But the first is it wise for religious leaders to meet with the President of the United States to discuss community issues? Second question, is meeting and dialoguing with people in high places synonymous with aligning, endorsing, and agreeing with their politics and policies? And then finally, the third question, does the Scripture forbid religious leaders from meeting with political leaders, even if the religious leader does not align with your spiritual or political values. Well, that is our subject for today. You've met the panelists. Now we're ready to debate and discuss it. Let's go back to Dr. Matthews. Thank you for helping to open the program today. Tell us more of your thoughts on this subject.
It's good being here. And let me first start by saying if President Bush, President Clinton, President Obama, and President Trump, whoever's in office, I believe strongly that religious leaders are obligated to speak with the person who is in power, in particular if he or she has been invited to speak. In a democracy, people can speak with whoever they would like to speak with. They can say whatever they like to say. And in this particular case, this was involving the issue of prison reform and talking to the president to see what he and his administration can do to help the African American community. I think we have to be careful to separate the person from the problem. And some may say, well, the person is the problem. But still, I think it's wise for us to be able to talk to those who are in power to try to help our communities. I was actually taken aback and very frustrated, not just with Don Lemon, but other leaders in our community who absolutely just berated this pastor and other pastors. And I just think it's unfair, and I think we have to look at the larger picture. A photo op, I don't think that should be the agenda or the top of the agenda. We shouldn't say don't meet because it's a photo op. And then another thing that's really important, just for me, it's kind of common sense. If you're on camera on CNN or Fox News or whatever it is, and you're talking to the President of the United States, be him Barack Obama, Donald Trump, George Bush, I don't think that's the time to blast the president if you are on camera in the United States and worldwide. We don't know if any of these pastors spoke with the president about his rhetoric that has outraged and enraged individuals. We don't know because we're not omnicompetent, we're not omniscient. We don't know what conversations took place outside of the cameras. So I think we should cut these pastors some slack, and whenever we have an opportunity, like Nehemiah did with the king, Nehemiah took advantage of the king's request. The king said, "What can I do for you?" in chapter 2 of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was ready to step in and said, "This is what you can do." And I think we're obligated as religious leaders to do so.
All right, thank you very much. And now, Rabbi Bentley, welcome back to the program. You started by saying that truth to power is important. We need to speak that way.
It is part of what I've done myself much of my life. I have met with many politicians, many of whom I did not agree with. When people ask me who my biblical heroes are, I mention Moses and Aaron, who confronted Pharaoh. I mention Nathan, who told King David, "Thou art the man." I mention Elijah, who confronted Ahab and Jezebel. I mentioned Jeremiah, who got thrown into prison for confronting the king. And I mentioned Daniel, who got thrown into a lion's den and a flaming fiery furnace. And then there's Jesus, who did pretty well speaking to Pontius Pilate and Joseph Caphias, the high priest. And this is really good. He hung out with tax collectors. Some translations say publicans, tax collectors. I don't think in 5,000 years of civilization's history, any tax collector anywhere has ever been a popular figure.
All right, well, thank you for that. And tax collectors, we love you. We really do. We're glad that you've tuned in today as well. Bishop Lakey, you wanted to say something about this, yes.
Though I agree in principle with what Dr. Matthews and the rabbi is saying, the question in this instance is, what is a religious leader? Presumably, John Gray, Reverend Gray, was representing the black religious community. My concern is that this president, has chosen not to meet with the National Baptists, the Progressive Baptists, the African Methodist Episcopal, the Church of God in Christ, not the NAACP, not the Urban League, none of the who we recognize in the black community as our religious leadership. This president has not met with any of them. Now, I agree, I have met with politicians I didn't like, even here in Atlanta, here in Dallas when I was a pastor here. The question is, no politician has a right to go into the black community, pick out a black leader, and then have that black leader speak for the black community. That's my concern. But the rabbi gave all of these heroes, my heroes too, who shook their fists and all that kind of stuff, but they were confronting the wrongs in power. Brother Gray did not tell publicly the president anything that the president was doing that was wrong. Now, I don't know what went on behind closed doors. He said he was there to talk about prison reform, but there's been no legislation proposed by the president on prison reform. The president has not, to my knowledge, has not said one word about prison reform. Now, don't come here and tell us in the black community, we're not fools. Don't go tell us you're going up there to talk about prison reform, and nobody in the administration has said one word about prison reform. Okay, go meet with the president. That doesn't bother me, but don't say you're representing me. We've always had what we used to call handkerchief heads, and I'm not calling Brother Gray that. We have always had what we call Uncle Toms. I'm not calling him that. What I'm saying is the fact that white folk want to meet with a black man is not news. We've always been sold out by white folk. But some of us have stood and met with people we didn't like, but we didn't just meet to grin in his face, rub our heads, and shuffle our feet. No, we went there to say, what you're doing is wrong. We were like like Elijah in front of Ahab, saying, you are doing wrong, and if you don't change, God is going to do something to you. That's what the black preacher does, and Brother Gray didn't do that. He failed us when he met with the president. I'm not condemning him for meeting with the president. I'm condemning him because he didn't do what a black preacher does when he meets with power.
All right, thank you very much. Canon Peterson. And well, sure, surely. Dr. Matthews, want to respond? And then we'll come to Canon Peterson. You don't mind, do you?
My new friend, Bishop Lakey, I just respectfully, totally disagree with just about everything he just said. I think this is part of the challenge we have in our community is that, and we don't know that President Trump went in there and handpicked John Gray. And in fact, there were a plethora of pastors there. And if someone from the NAACP or the National Baptist Convention is going to the White House to speak on prison reform, who's to say that a preacher from the National Baptist Convention can speak on prison reform better than John Gray? I think this is a situation, again, of separating the persons from the problem. The topic is prison reform, and when we get that out into the president's ear, and I don't know how legislation works. Well, yes, I do a little bit. It's not going to happen overnight. I think if we plant a seed in his ear, the president's ear, we'll be okay. But I think this is what, within our community, the African American community, we have different opinions, and we don't all think alike. And I think we should get to the place where we have people at the table, the different tables. And so and me and my brother will hug after the show.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. That's why we're here. I mean, we're here to discuss these issues, agree or disagree. Canon Peterson, your turn.
Well, I was going to say, on the surface, this is what I was going to say. I think all of us would agree that John Gray did the right thing. I amend that statement because I do think that Othel has pointed out a very important point, but I think that your point is equally important in relationship to the situations and the polarization that we face today in this nation. I certainly hear what is being said by our two colleagues, that the questions in relationship to who a person chooses to represent the black community at a situation like that, and whether or not prison reform was a cover or whatever. But that is way beyond my pay grade. I think that I want to say that I do believe that we have a tremendous amount of political distrust in this country. We only have to look at our Congress, the Senate, for example. So many of them do not speak with each other, and will never have a conversation. And therefore, I want to be able to lift up two senators, Jeff Flake, a Republican senator from Arizona, and Chris Coons, a Democrat from Connecticut, who during the Kavanaugh hearings actually got together and was able to at least have a stay in that nomination process until the FBI conducted a report. And I thought that that was a significant step forward, that two people from opposing parties would be able to do that. Basically, I would argue that it is always important to be able to speak to someone. Regardless what the situation is. But I also, certainly understand the position that Othel has taken this morning in relationship to some of the dangers and pitfalls, therefore, as well.
All right, thank you very much. Reverend Plumley, welcome to the program. Your thoughts, please.
Thank you. Frankly, I agree with Othel. I think that conversation is always good, but one must be politically wise. One must understand the perception of what's going on. I think the biblical models that we have are for people who went in with some grace sometimes, but with challenge all the time. And that is the model that we have for conversations with people in power in the sort of way that Donald Trump is in power, the most powerful person in the entire world. How can we ignore him? We must speak with him, but we must make it plain to all the world the way we're speaking with him and what we're saying to him and what there is about what he is or isn't doing that we agree with or disagree with. That needs to be plain and does not and cannot just be covered over with words about prison reform that have, number one, never been brought up before, or number two, by anybody in that administration. Number two, we've seen absolutely no movement by the administration in that direction to even indicate that the meeting itself had any influence at all on the person that they were meeting with. So all that is to say, one must be in conversation, but one must always understand the political situation, the political dangers, and one must be politically wise.
So freedom to speak, freedom to meet does come with some risk.
Yes.
And one has to weigh and balance, am I willing to accept and take this risk in order to speak, knowing that there could be opportunists out there that would take advantage? Dr. Matthews, anything further? Or Bishop Lakey? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Let's come. Sorry, Andrea.
We need a part two. We need a part two.
Yes, Dr.
Okay,
Luxton.
this is so interesting. I was quite happy to sit
No,
back.
I was too kind of lost up into it. Please, Dr. Luxton.
I may be trying to be a little bit idealistic in what I'm going to say now. I mean, was it, just on this particular issue, was it wise for this meeting to happen? Maybe not. Was it wrong? Probably not. But when I look at the gospel, the thing that bothers me is how easy it is for the community to criticize what someone does when they meet with someone else. Jesus was criticized constantly. Now, it may not have been with political powers, but that sense of, well, why are you meeting with this person? Why are you meeting with that person? What are you doing? And I think that we can waste a lot of our time trying to analyze why someone is doing something and whether it's right or wrong. rather than recognizing that maybe something good can come out of this, and maybe we should be supporting that. I mean, Nicodemus came to Jesus by night. Why did he do that? Probably so people wouldn't see him.
Because he was politically wise.
Because he
understood
was-
the perception.
Right, but is politically wise, but should it be like that? And that's why I'm saying I'm being a bit idealistic here. You know, from a leadership perspective, I don't want people to set up there and say, oh, I've got to stay at a distance because of how it might be perceived. Because if people don't come around the table and talk and express their concerns to me, I'll never know what they are. So I really think we just need to give people a bit of a break when they want to try and have communication with people, to think, you know, maybe it's important. Maybe what they're doing is important, even though it might not be politically wise.
That's going to
Now,
happen.
some would say Nicodemus wasn't politically wise. They would say he was a political coward because he went at night instead of in front of the people, the other Pharisees.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. You know, we're going to need another program, I think, folks, like a bigger boat or whatever. But anyway, you'll have time to speak again in the summations in just a few moments. But before we get to that, there's an important message I'd like for you to stand by and listen to. We'll be back in just a few moments.
Thank you, Pastor Lutz. We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the Town Hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you, Pastor Lutz, and today's closing statements.
Thank you and welcome back. I'm so glad that you've joined us for today's program. It's been an interesting, stimulating conversation, to say the least. And I can't wait to hear the summation, so let's go to them right away. We'll begin with Rabbi Bentley.
For me, this question is, I could say a no-brainer, but I have a picture in my office of Jeremiah the prophet, as painted by Rembrandt. It's not a happy painting. But it is, I think, part of the work, if you are going to be a religious leader, to speak truth to power.
All right, thank you very much and for your participation today. Reverend Plumley, your summation, please.
Thank you. I guess I begin with some difficulty in the original framing of the question, which put it in terms of a freedom to meet. Of course, people are free to meet with those with whom they choose to meet. But one must always understand the perception in the larger community of what one is what one is doing and what one has an opportunity to do when one does meet. The figure of William Barber keeps coming to my mind. If President Trump wants to find out about what African Americans are concerned about in terms of prison reform and all sorts of things, go to the leader of the New Poor People's Campaign.
All right, thank you very much. Bishop Lakey.
Thank you. I admit my perceptions are generational, but in my judgment, minority, in this case, Black religious leaders, must be careful, most careful, not to validate the racial behavior of those in power. And I'm afraid that Brother John Gray validated the racist behavior of our president.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Dr. Matthews, your summation.
Yes, I'll take the antithesis of Rabbi. I will say that it is a no-brainer. Religious leaders should take every opportunity that they can to meet with the people in power. And I don't think we need to compromise our convictions based on perceptions. if we are have convictions to meet with the president, be him, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, George Bush, we should meet to try to make change.
All right, thank you, and for today's participation. And now Dr. Luxton.
You know, as I've been listening to this conversation, it strikes to me that there is an individual issue here and then there's a community issue. And I think from an individual perspective, should we be willing to speak to those in power and speak with authority with that and present positions and converse? Absolutely, yes. I do understand the question about when we are being seen as a representative of a group, then really we may not be the main representative of. Maybe then that's where we need to be at least thoughtful, at least converse with our community to make sure that there's clarity about what we're representing, so that it can be positive. So there may be a difference between there, but I still go to the other end of it, which is we need to give each other a break on not being too concerned about who speaks to whom, and kind of let people go out there and try and do the right thing in their communication.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Canon Peterson, your summation, please.
Yes, as a result of listening to this conversation, it seems to me that it's easy to take a side in this without understanding the complications and the political ramifications. I mean, William Barber, is just an outstanding person. And I suspect we can ask the question, why was not William Barber asked to go instead of John Gray? At least William Barber would have a much higher profile in going to be able to meet with the president, and he gives every single breath of his life to the Poor People's Campaign. So I think that Andrea has certainly struck a very important chord here in relationship to the different issues that are involved in making decisions like this. I'm sure that John Gray intentionality was absolutely pure, but that does not mean that he was perhaps the best person to have there doing that. But then, of course, you come into the problem of it's the president's invitation who comes to meet with him in a situation like that. So, wow, what a day.
Oh, right. Well, thank you for being here today as well. And to the rest of the panelists, a great thank you for this discussion. For now, the Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America, we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. And now, friends, until next week at the same time over this very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you. With brotherhood from sea